Welcome to the Certified Angus Beef Market Report. I'm Nicole Ursig. Today I have with me our Vice President of Business Analysis, Steve Ringle, and we are talking about growth in the food service sector. So Steve, just to start us off, can you define what food service is? When we use that term in our business, I think it makes sense to a lot of people, but it's also kind of industry jargon. So what does it mean?
Yeah, food service, quite simply, is restaurants, right? You know, we all enjoy going out and having a great burger or a great steak. So that's really what we're talking about whenever we're talking about food service.
And how does that compare to, we say food service and then retail?
Yeah, so retail would be the grocery store, right? So in addition to maybe it's the celebration of going out to the restaurant to sit down and enjoy the steak. Instead of doing that, you're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to go to retail, right? And maybe buy the steak yourself and then take it home and overcook it like I do, right? So
I hope not.
Yeah.
So what does the food service marketplace look like today?
Yeah, it's strong for us today. I would tell you that this year we're getting ready to wrap up our fiscal. And we're going to be up the 10th year in a row in terms of food service. So demand obviously continues to be very strong for us in that space.
So when you say strong, what does that mean like as a percentage of our business and moving pounds of beef? Yeah,
so last year we finished at about 1.2 billion pounds as an organization. Food service is going to be about a third of that. This year alone, as we wrap up this fiscal, we'll be up another 4.5% or so within food service. So 4.5% on a pretty big number tells you that folks are really enjoying going out and celebrating with high quality beef.
So what's driving the demand growth that we're seeing in the food service sector?
Yeah, the demand growth definitely is the value that the brand has within the marketplace. So I know that consumers are seeking out this brand. I know that our restaurant, our food service operators that are handling this, they've not only gravitated towards certified Angus beef in general, but we've seen a huge growth in certified Angus beef prime as well, of really taking that to the entire next level.
Why is it that a food service distributor or a restaurateur is willing to pay the premium to be able to serve certified Angus beef in their restaurant?
It comes down to the taste component, but probably most importantly, the consistency of that. You know, as we talk about and as we train folks here in Worcester, Ohio, we say we don't sell meat necessarily, we sell meat insurance. That's what we're doing. So that restaurant operator, whenever they're buying the brand, they know that it's going to be consistent and it's going to be really, really good and it's going to perform for them every time. We've done countless studies that tell us that the chance of having a bad eating experience with the certified Angus beef brand is extremely low. So that in and of itself gives that restaurant operator the utmost confidence to believe in our brand.
Well, that's exciting because as we see growth in this sector, it's demand for more high-quality beef and driving premiums for the cattleman as he markets beef, especially on a grid. So when we talk about moving pounds of beef, what does that equate to in number of cattle or carcasses that this growth is able to offer to the beef industry?
Yeah, I would tell you that our food service business is such that I look at that as our flow business to a certain extent, meaning that it is pretty steady. So it's steady, but it's skewed towards middle meats, which is going to be the highest valued items coming out of those carcasses. So as we look at food service on a weekly basis, it is extremely steady, but about 25% of that mix is in the form of middle meats.
Compare for me food service and retail in terms of moving pounds and moving carcasses.
Yep, so the retail was kind of a roller coaster ride, if you will, is kind of how I like to describe it. So I'll take a couple steps back and kind of give you a little bit of perspective of that retail operation, okay? So as we talked about food service being very steady, hey, you can almost count on X amount of pounds of any given cut to be coming through the pipeline every week, okay? So you can almost count on that. Retail's similar in that there is flow business there. Whenever I'm talking about flow business in retail, that's essentially that retailer saying, if I put that item in the case at, say, a $6.99 price point, okay, and I'm not putting that on sale this week, I'm still going to sell some of that. So let's take a roast as an example. If I'm a shopper, I'm making out my shopping list and so forth, and I know I want to do a roast, I'm going to show up at that retailer, and I've already have it in my mind that I am going to buy a roast. I'm not leaving here without buying the roast. And if it's not on sale, I'm still going to buy it. Okay, so that's the flow business. Where it becomes the difference then is in the ad business or the feature activity as we talk about it. And that's where the roller coaster really starts to happen, okay? So this feature activity is, that's instead of it being at the $5.99 or the $6.99 price point, well now it may be on the front page at a $2.49 price point. So that retailer is going to go from selling flow to selling a lot of product for that week. So I'll give you a good example. We work with retailers today that the flow business is just for one store unless you happen to operate 300 stores, okay? So now that flow just starts to get a little bit bigger, okay? So some of our largest retailers that we work with today, their flow business is actually about a load of product a week, or about 45,000 pounds roughly. That alone, if we're talking about a roast item, we need about 1,000 head of cattle just to supply the flow business for 1 week for that one retailer. Whenever we transition into ad activity now and say that retailer did what we talked about and put it out there at a $2.49 price point, we need 20 times the amount of product now because that retailer is going to sell 20 times more. So instead of selling 1 load, they're selling 20 loads. This is big stuff, right? So in order to do that, we have to have a system in place going all the way through the beef supply chain to be able to pull those animals through, not at a rate of 1,000 head for that week, but 20,000 head of cattle for that week.
So those ad features, and when you're talking about an ad feature, you're talking about that thing you get in the mail, right?
That features thing you get in the mail. Yeah.
What's on sale this week at the grocery store. That can really impact the cattle market based on the number of carcasses that we're able to move,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, but the cool thing about it, and we're talking big numbers here. I mean, we're talking 20,000 head of cattle. We're talking about 1.2 billion pounds that we sold. These are big numbers. Where I start to get really excited is that, man, we're talking about one item for 1 week for one retailer. What are we doing with the rest of it for that week, right? That's kind of the elephant in the room. Like, where's the rest of it going? And that's where I'll tie this thing right back to the variety of our business and the diversity of certified Angus beef. It is our job, it's the job of our sales team now to go out, and whenever that feature happens, we still have to sell the ribeyes. Well, guess where those are going to go? We're going to go right back to the restaurant operator that we talked about earlier. We still got to sell the brisket. Well, where's that going to go? It's going to go to these barbecue joints. You know, where the thin meat's going to go. We're going to export those out internationally. So we always have to have a mechanism in place to be able to absorb the entire thing and just enjoy this roller coaster ride while we can, right?
Thank you so much, Steve. It's so interesting to learn all the different pieces of how the beef market works together and how certified Angus beef can help drive that demand.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
For more information like this, head over to cabcattle.com and don't miss another episode by subscribing to our CAB Cattleman Connection YouTube channel.